Hello everyone, welcome to our 12th instructional video for Math 1. Hopefully you guys are doing well. It is the middle of the week, and though Tuesday was a bit sunny, today's a little bit gloomy, but spring is just around the corner, or perhaps some can say even right here. Hopefully you can add a little bit more color to your wardrobe today, get in the spirit of spring. It is our Wednesday Spring Fling Day today. I'm putting a little bit of flowers in the background for us, so you guys can maybe have a little bit more joy today. But let's get right into math. I'm going to be going into our second review lesson. You want to have your paper document with you with your pen and pencil, your tab open with your online document if you're following along with me on the computer, or your note-taking preference of choice. Let me know actually how you are taking notes, how you are trying to remember all this material, and letting me know what you want to see in the next video and what helps and doesn't help. That kind of feedback is always really, really helpful for me. So let's begin. I'm going to just share our screen. All right, so you should see right in front of you our 12th lesson for today. Before I go over the objective, what we're gonna do, briefly talk about the review week. I'm gonna go over some quick notes, and then I'm going to go over a example problem with you all, how I would write it out. And you will be doing a practice problem by yourself on your own. And that's it for today. It's very straightforward. It's not too much. And I'll be going over some important dates. Let's go back to the beginning. So we're on the first page. What is our objective for today? So I want you guys to see that today's objective is you want to review how to describe a scatter plot by identifying the variables, the trend, the strength, and the relationship. Now, if you're still confused about what variables are and what it means to understand the kinds of data, you want to go back to lesson number 11 and check that video out, or check out the live session on Tuesday. I do go over the problem or something similar, and so it might add a little bit more context to what we're doing today. Here is our review week once again. This is our second one. You want to be working on your mini QPA 1 and mini QPA 2, and you want to try all the lessons for this week. So if you've been on track so far, good job. And message me if you need any help. So my number is available on Google Classroom. I am available from 8 to 5, and I can get back to you as soon as possible. And another note, our capstone QPA, our final project for Unit 5, is going to be on the 27th. So keep that in mind. So let's turn to page 2. Now, I do want you to know that when it comes to scatter plots, I really want you guys to think about when you want to describe anything, you want to know the what, right? What is it comparing? What are you talking about? You really want to focus on the relevance of the material, and you want to think about the conclusion, right? The why. What's the point of all this? Also, you can hear in the background probably our neighborhood dog. Hopefully, if you do have your own dog of your own, you get to have a lot of fluffy cuddles with your pets. But please, hopefully, it's not too distracting. Okay, so you're talking about the what, the relevance, and the why, and that's what you're really thinking about when you're talking about scatter plots. Like we said, when we're talking about correlation, we're really just talking about the relationship between certain variables, and variables are things that we're measuring, counting, kind of keeping track of about certain data. And so when we're trying to describe a scatter plot, there are 4 key things that you want to focus on. All right, so the first one you want to focus on is, what are you actually comparing? What are our independent and dependent variables, right? What are our dependent and independent variables? If you take note, basically, if you have the graph in front of you, whatever is representing your x values, that's your independent variable. Whatever you're representing your dependent variables, Now, whenever you're representing your y values, that's your dependent variable. So when you're looking at a graph and I'm thinking about describing a scatter plot, you gotta first tell me what we're comparing. If you just tell me about some patterns and whatnot, I have no idea what you're actually studying, then what's the point, right? So you always want to start off with the who or the what. Excuse me. Now, the second thing that you want to focus on is the trend. When I'm talking about the trend, I'm talking about the pattern that this correlation has, right? Is the relationship going in a certain direction? So there are three types of trends. There's going to be a positive trend, a negative trend, and no trend or no correlation, meaning there isn't a relationship between the two variables. So when it's positive or negative, positive means it goes in a upward direction. So if you look at the top of your paper again, if it goes in an upward direction, you know that it's a positive correlation. If it goes in a downward direction from left to right, you know it's a negative correlation. And what that means is that as whatever your independent variable, as it increases, that means your dependent variable is also increasing for a positive correlation. When we're talking about a negative correlation, as your independent variables increase, that means your dependent variables are decreasing, meaning they're getting smaller. So that is the kind of relationship we're talking about. Now, if, for instance, you look at a scatter plot and there's no correlation, it's sort of um, like your foot size with how much money you make in your life. Like that is something that doesn't have any correlation, right? Like no matter how small or big your feet are, that doesn't really tell you what your income is like. Usually those are cases where there's no correlation or no relationship. If that's the case, then there is nothing that you can tell about the other two remaining features. If you do have no correlation, that's it. You want to skip to relationship, basically. Or basically, you can't talk about strength, which is number 3. It is our strength of the relationship. Now, you're wondering, like, I really want you guys to understand why we're talking about these 4 features. Like, you want to know who or what you're talking about, right? That's why you figure out the variables. You want to see the general pattern. That's why you talk about the trend. And then you want to talk about, like, how relevant it is. Like, is it actually like a decent relationship? Like not is it a strong enough relationship that we can actually make studies about or make conclusions or use it for our argument? If so, that's why strength is really important, because if it's a weak relationship, it's not really going to support your argument or whatever case you're trying to make. But if it's a strong relationship, like there's a strong correlation between these two things, that basically means that yeah, you're right, like this is actually going to be data that supports whatever, research question I have. And so you want to look at these 3 boxes. The way I like to think of it is this. Let's say I just draw a highlight in the middle of all this data. The closer it forms to a line. So all of these scatter plots are linear. I had decided not to go over nonlinear scatter plots for our unit, so don't worry about that. So just assume that most of them will be linear or no correlation. When the data points are close together to form a line, so you notice how a lot of these dots are already inside the highlights, that's saying it's strong. Meaning whatever your X and Y are, like it has a strong negative relationship. It means that it is there is a closer relationship between the two. When it's moderate, right, it's kind of more spread apart. And then when it's weak, it's kind of spread apart, like completely like apart. Like you can see like all the data points here. Um, outside, not close to the line. And it's saying that, yeah, there is a relationship, there is a pattern, the pattern is negative, but like it's not completely connected to each other. They're not really dependent on each other. That's what a weak relationship is saying. It can go in the positive direction as well. I just listed the negative examples just so you guys can see that. And finally, I'm talking about when I ask for the relationship, I'm basically asking for what's the point? What's the final conclusion, right? And I'll talk more about this on the next page when I go over the practice problem. But these 4 things are really important features of a scatter plot, and I want you to address all 4 when you are describing it. The more detail, the better. If you want to be able to support your answers, you want to be able to describe and explain in great detail, okay? So even though I asked for these 4, go far, go more and beyond, right? That's not the right phrase, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. Don't do the bare minimum. Write as much as you can, explain as much as you can about the scatter plot, because that's going to help you in your future classes, basically how to use this to support your argument. And that's what math is for, right? So let's turn to page 3, and we have the scatter plot, and your goal is to describe it. So let's take a moment to look at this, okay? I always say whenever you approach a problem, you want to take note of what you notice, right? Notice things. What pieces of information are there? And from there, you guys can organize it. So I'm going to go over that practice, right? So this is just my brainstorming practice right here. Actually, let me make this bigger. Right. So I'm in my brainstorming stage. Just from off the get-go, what do I see? I see that there are students. We're talking about time, studying, and our QPA score, which is the name for our test, QPA percentage. I noticed that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students. There is a graph or a scatter plot, to be more specific. And there is a table. And I noticed that just generally it's going in an upward direction. Okay? So just by looking at this graph, even if I didn't know anything about this scatter plot, these are things that I can just figure out from just looking at this problem. And it's really important because then that gives me, one, the confidence to be like, okay, I can see some things that I understand from here. And you can also make sure that when you look at your answer, okay, have I covered everything? Am I missing anything? Is any of this information actually relevant? And trying to figure out what's important and not important. So we are looking at the scatter plot, and it's telling me to identify the independent and dependent variable, the trend, the strength, the relationship, all things that we went over. So how would I answer this? Why don't you pause the video for a moment and actually take a moment to write out. It could be on a sheet of paper, it could be on the document itself, or just in your head. Text it to a friend. So they can also start watching this video too. How would you describe the scatter plot? So pause the video, take a moment to write your description, and then unpause and then see if you got it right. Okay, hopefully you took a moment to pause the video and try this on your own. Now we can kind of see how I would have approached it. So I look at the scatter plot. The first thing I realize, okay, I'm going to say the scatter plot. Actually, I wonder if I could type this out. That's probably much better. Let me do that. Let me type something instead. Okay. All right. Let's make this bigger. How do I make this bigger? 18. No, let's make this even bigger. Momentary technical difficulties here. Okay, let's do this. Why didn't I do this before? You live and learn. All right, so this scatter plot compares time studying, which is our independent variable, and our QPA score, which is our dependent variable. The trend is positive. It goes up in a upward direction from left to right. The trend is positive. And the correlation, I would say, based on this graph, because the correlation is strong, um, because the points nearly form a line. And I would say, finishing up, what is the relationship? I would say basically, based on this graph, based on this data, the more time you spend studying, you will probably get a higher QPA score. That is the conclusion that I make. So that should be your answer for this description, okay? You mentioned the independent, dependent variable. You are mentioning the trend. You're mentioning the correlation and the strength of it. And you make a conclusion. Basically, the more time you spend studying, you're probably going to get a higher QPA score. Please make sure that you include all 4 things, and at the bare minimum, you should have 4 sentences in your description. If you do not target any of them, if you miss a piece, then it means I don't get the full picture, right? And therefore, it would be incomplete and I will not be able to grade you. So please make sure you answer all parts of the scatter plot, all right? And there's other things that we can information we can draw from the scatter plot. If you like, you can mention how out of everybody, Kevin had the lowest score. You can mention how, like, what is it? After, you can guess, after studying for 80 minutes, you probably don't need to study any more than that, right? So there's a lot of information you can get from the scatter plot. The idea is, what's the bare minimum that you can get from this, and how can you use this to support any claims that you'd like to make? But yeah, great job in following with me so far. Please try the practice problem on number page 4 on your own, and check out the live session on Thursday from 9:30 to 11:30 to see the answers. I will be going over that in my live session, so please come. And just another note, today is Wednesday. Live session tomorrow. Friday is the last video that I'll be posting for this unit. Then it's spring break, and our QPA starts on the 27th. Today is our spring fling, so that's why, yes, wear your vibrant colors, take a selfie, post it on Facebook or Instagram, tag us. Tomorrow, you can send a picture or video of your talent, so you can send your TikTok videos, etc. And this is the most important thing. On Friday at 4 p.m., we have our community meeting, okay? So join us in our virtual community meeting at 4 p.m. It won't be that long. Come and say hello. No excuses, right? Y'all be at home. So join us, but be safe, be well, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves, and hopefully math was impossibly easy. Have a great day.